Hey guys, very good morning. Today we are going to start our new Bible study, John chapter 1, verse 43 to 51. Before starting our Bible study, we have to read these verses twice and thrice for better understanding. And then after, find answers to some questions to help you understand God's words in the Word of Life. From verse 43 to 51, we have to ask some questions like what are the common words used in this passage, who is writing, whom it is written to, when it was written, why author is writing, and who is in the text of the given text. Is there any sin that I must confess? Is there any warning that I should head to? And is there any commandment that I have to obey? Is there any model for me to follow in that passage? Do I have any promise to own it from that passage? And what is the main lesson that God has given me from this passage? So these are the questions we have to ask from this passage. And now we are going to discuss verse by verse from John chapter 1 verse 43 to 51. Calling of Philip and Nathanael. Verse 43 we can say calling of Philip, and 44 to 45 Philip finds Nathanael, and 46 Nathanael questions if the Messiah can come from Nazareth, and verse 47 Jesus praises Nathanael's character, and verse 48 Jesus demonstrates his omnipresence, and verse 49 Nathanael proclaims his faith, and verse 50 to 51 Jesus promises he will see much greater things. So from verse 43 to 51 we can prepare some questions here for discussion. The first question we can prepare: what do we know about Philip and Nathanael? And the second question: what is Philip's first recorded act after being called by Jesus? And third question we can prepare: what is significant about this? And fourth question: are there any principles we can gather from this? Next question: how does Philip deal with Nathanael's question? And next question: how effect do you think it would have been if Philip had tried to explain why it was okay that Jesus came from Nazareth, or that perhaps he was really from Bethlehem and they didn't know it? And we can ask continuously, we can prepare some questions continuously like what can we learn from this? Where was Nazareth? What was the general opinion of Nazareth at that time? And what does the phrase an Israelite indeed mean? What does it mean then that Jesus saw Nathanael under the fig tree? Did Jesus pass by there earlier? What is the mean to show? Is it good or bad that God is everywhere? Compare Nathanael's response to the response of most Israelites at the time. Next question: what does the phrase no deceit or no guile mean to you? And it is important that Nathanael believed when he didn't see the greater things, and most Israelites didn't believe even when they did see the great things. What does this teach us about faith? Now we are going to discuss one by one question. First we are going to discuss Nathanael. The name means God given, and Nathanael's home was Cana of Galilee. When you look at John chapter 21 verse 2, this was the town where Jesus performed his first major miracle, turning the water into wine. Jesus called Nathanael as Israelites indeed. This could be because Nathanael is a model Israelite who placed his faith in the Messiah when he came. Many Israelites were only Israelites physically, but Nathanael was also one spiritually. When you look at from verse 47, we can infer that Nathanael must have already been a believer in God. Surely an unbeliever would be filled with deceit, but Nathanael was an honest person. We can also see that Nathanael was well versed in scripture. When Philip told him that Jesus was from Nazareth, he immediately doubted if Jesus could be the Messiah. It was well known that the Messiah would be from Bethlehem. When you look at Micah chapter 5 verse 2, that is the Old Testament. The priests and scribes knew this as well and had told it to Herod years before. In contrast, Nazareth was a small and insignificant village. No one expected that the Messiah would come from that region. John chapter 7 verse 41 to 52. Nathanael has also often been identified with Bartholomew, same person, different name. This is because John ever mentions Bartholomew, who was listed with Philip in Matthew chapter 10 verse 3, but mentions Nathanael, who was a friend of Philip in this passage. It is unknown if they are same persons, but it is possible. Nathanael had a soft heart. He was very open to God and had a strong faith. He didn't need a lot of evidence, but simply believed. And now we are going to discuss who is Philip. Lover of horses. More is known about Philip than any other of the apostles outside of the first group. His hometown was the same as Peter and Andrew, Bethsaida. Like Philip already knew, Andrew was the friends with him. This is why they are mentioned together a couple of times in the Gospels. They were also the only 2 of 12 to have a Greek name. Philip was the first one called by Jesus. When you look at John chapter 1 verse 43, it is likely that he also, like Andrew and John and Peter, had already been a disciple of John the Baptist. This was soon after Jesus had changed Peter's name. Philip was the leader of the second group of disciples. When you look at Matthew chapter 10 verse 3, and he is mentioned at the top of the list of the second group in every list. Notice what he does almost immediately after being called by Jesus. His first act is to go and tell his friends about Christ. It was not just by chance and Nathanael didn't go to him. Philip went out purposely with the intent to tell Nathanael. We are shown more communication between Jesus and Philip than with most of the apostles. Jesus asked Philip where they should buy bread to feed the big crowd. When you look at John chapter 6 verse 5 to 9. This was done in order to test Philip and his faith. Philip answered reasonably and practically according to man's thinking, but left out the spiritual aspect and didn't think of Jesus' miraculous ability. Through this episode, he must have gained much more of faith in the Messiah. In John chapter 12 verse 20 to 22, there is another short record about Philip. Some Greeks had come to worship and wanted to know more about Jesus. They first went to Philip. Once again, Philip, through Andrew, went to Jesus and probably took them to Jesus as well. Philip didn't go into a long spiel about who Jesus was and all the miracles he had done. Instead, he wants them to meet and see Jesus directly. This is a good example for us. We should not rely on our own knowledge or logic. Our goal should be to introduce people to Jesus and let him do the changing. Philip was a slow learner. However, he had been present and saw Jesus' miracles. He had heard Jesus' teachings, but still he asked Jesus to show the Father. John chapter 14 verse 8. Philip believed and loved the Lord, but like the other disciples, he didn't understand fully. He knew he had something amazing in Jesus. He believed he was the Messiah. He just didn't know all the theology and ramifications of it. However, Philip was still there after Jesus arose from the dead and presumably saw Jesus. When you look at Acts chapter 1 verse 13, he then went on to boldly proclaim the gospel. Tradition says that he was martyred at Hierapolis in Phrygia. Nazareth was the home of Mary and Joseph and was also where Jesus was brought up. When you look at Luke chapter 4 verse 16, and it was the place where the angel Gabriel announced to Mary that she would have a son who would save the world from their sins. This was where the family returned to in Israel after they came back from Egypt, where they had gone to escape Herod. Nazareth is identified with the town of En-Nazareth. This small town has 5,000 to 1,000 people now and is estimated to have been a little larger at the time of Christ. The Bible is a historical book. The people were real people and they lived in real places. It is located in South Lebanon, and at the time a main road for traffic between Egypt and Asia lay close to it. Nazareth was a small and insignificant village. It was never mentioned by name in the Old Testament, and therefore no one thought that the Messiah would come from there. Most didn't know he actually came from Bethlehem. From Nathanael and the priest, John chapter 7 verse 41 and 52 words, It also likely that people from that area were looked down on. This could be due to moral character, which was obviously lacking since they didn't believe Jesus despite the signs he did there. Status in society or other factors. Yes, Jesus began his ministry in the synagogue there, and you look at Matthew chapter 13 verse 54. What a blessing for the Son of God to appear in person, living and teaching in your own city. The city of Nazareth was truly blessed, but they wasted their great opportunity. They expelled him, once trying to kill him. If you go there, you can still see the hill they tried to throw him off. They didn't give him any honor, and they had very little faith. As a consequence, Jesus went elsewhere and did few miracles there. Elections. Notice that Jesus found Philippi John chapter 1:43, and that it was Jesus who issued the call to follow me. When you look at John chapter 1 verse 43, we know this is to be true from John chapter 15 verse 15, where Jesus said that he chooses us, not the other way around. Jesus purposed to go there. He took the initiative in going to Philip's location. He took the initiative in talking with Philip. He took the initiation in commanding Philip to follow him. And he had already begun the work in Philip's heart a long time before that. Some may ask, what about Nathanael? He went to Jesus, right? Nathanael went to Jesus because he worked through Philip to bring Nathanael there. Notice that Jesus was already observing Nathanael before Nathanael ever came. This is just one more example that God calls and finds us. Evangelism. Here we see a good example of evangelism. It is similar to Andrew with Peter. Philip didn't have all the answers. He didn't have much experience. He had only been following Jesus a very short time. Indeed, Philip did make mistakes. He said Jesus of Nazareth when he was from Bethlehem, called him the son of Joseph, and he was only the supposed son, and said that he found Jesus when Jesus found him. Many people in this situation make a lot of excuses for why they can't share the gospel. They say that they can't answer questions, they don't want to make mistakes, they can't share everything clearly. Encourage them to look at the examples of Philip. He could have made all these excuses. He could have found a lot of reasons to wait for a better time. However, now is the day of salvation. Philip made use of the time. As soon as he was called, he went to tell others. This is how it should work. Philip was enthusiastic and excited in his newfound lover for Christ. He shared it simply. He told Nathanael that he had found the Messiah and encouraged Nathanael to come and see. Evangelism is not that complicated. It is sharing what we have seen and heard and what God has done for us. When you look at 1 John chapter 1 verse 1 to 3, it is introducing others to God. Start introducing your friends to God. Tell them what He has done for you. Give them a Bible and let them look for themselves. With your help, Philip used a word come, signifying that he was still there to help. They would do it together. Don't be scared to make mistakes, because remember that it is God who saves us and calls us, who saves and calls, not us, everywhere. God, the Trinity, is everywhere. The fact that Nathanael believed in Jesus as the Messiah because of Jesus' statement that he was Nathanael under the tree shows that it was a miraculous event and Jesus was not there physically. John includes this to show us more about who Jesus is as a person. He is still omnipresent. Several times he healed others across a great distance. Jesus did limit many of his divine attributes when he came to earth, but he still knew everything that was going on everywhere and could see it all. He could see right into the heart. Reinforces this truth. God is everywhere. He created everything. He knows everything about us. We cannot escape from His presence. Is this good or bad? The answer is that it depends. If you are following God, it is great news that He is everywhere. He will be with us and lead us in all situations that we face. No matter how dark or scary the situation is, God is beside us. But if you are wicked and doing sins, it is bad for us that God is everywhere. He will find them out. He will judge us for that. We will not escape. When you are by yourself or think no one else is noticing or looking, remember God is there. He is watching. Judgment is His. When you are facing difficulties and walking through the valley of the shadow of death, remember that God is there. He will lead you and guide you. He will be your light and your strength. Verse 50. The disciples had the privilege of being there first hand to see all the mighty works that Jesus did. Jesus told Thomas he was blessed for believing and seeing, but that others who don't see yet still believe will be more blessed. Wow. Also from this we see that the longer we believe, the more and more evidence we will see that God is true. Verse 51, the phrase heavens opened appears to be figurative. It is like the unfolding of mysteries and revealing of whom Jesus was and what God's plan was. The angels ascending and descending is probably a reference to their ministry of service in Jesus' earthly ministry. They did serve him in the wilderness and the garden. Also the ascension heaven was opened and the angel came down. In addition, there were many things that happened that were not written. So it could have been fulfilled as a specific instance where Nathanael saw the angels physically ascending and descending on Jesus. Or it could be fulfilled at the second coming when the heavens open and Jesus comes back on earth, assuming the angels ascending and descending with him. Nathanael may or may not have seen it directly with his own eyes, but it could mean that he would see evidence of it, know it to be true. For example, think of the phrase, see what I mean. It doesn't necessarily mean to see with one's eyes, but can mean now you have evidence of my meaning. So we don't know exactly how this was fulfilled. It could be any of the above. The biblical record is historical. It records real people with real personalities. It records real places which can be visited and compared to the Bible account. It records real events which are backed up by many eyewitnesses accounts. If they had written about real places and people but not real events, or the writings would have been struck down. The second point, Jesus calls and finds us, not the other way around. From our vantage point, it may appear that we are the ones finding Jesus, but it is him who comes to us first and allows us to find him. Third one, our goal should be to introduce people to Jesus. We don't have to have all knowledge. We don't have to be able to answer all questions, but we do need to have a heart for people and a desire to lead them to Christ. We should do as Philip did, and if you don't know the answers, say come and see, or give them a Bible and say look and see. Fourth one is God is always watching us. He sees us wherever we are. He knows our hearts. We cannot deceive or trick God. Do right because he is watching. Also be honest with him. We must be honest in the front of God. We must be transparent. We must be holy. What a wonderful Bible study, right? I hope you people can understand this. God bless you. We'll meet in our next Bible study. Thank you.